Imagine someone tells you that the picture of the atom you saw in school is a comfortable illusion. A nucleus in the center, electrons orbiting like planets. Clean, orderly, intuitive. The problem is that if that were true, atoms wouldn't exist. Electrons in orbit would lose energy, spiral into the nucleus, and matter would collapse in a fraction of a second. And yet, here we are. That means the model in your mind does not describe reality. It only simplifies it. When you truly look inside an atom, the first thing that disappears is the idea of a trajectory. The electron is not there, waiting for you to point at it. Before you measure it, it has no definite position. It exists as a superposition of possibilities described by a mathematical function. It's not a tiny hidden ball. It's a set of probabilities. Asking, "Where is it?" before measuring is like asking the color of a coin that hasn't been tossed yet. And here's the unsettling part. Measuring is not passive observation. Measuring is intervention. The act of measurement transforms a cloud of probabilities into a concrete outcome. It doesn't reveal a pre-existing reality. It fixes one among many possibilities. Quantum physics doesn't tell you what the result will be. It only gives probabilities. The equation works with astonishing precision, but it doesn't explain why that jump from the fuzzy to the definite occurs. Mathematics predicts. Nature executes. The deeper mechanism remains hidden. The electron is neither a particle in the classical sense nor a traditional wave. In some experiments, it behaves like a localized object, in others, like a wave interfering with itself. It is neither one nor the other. It is a quantum object with no everyday equivalent. When you don't look at it, it evolves like a wave function. When you detect it, it appears as a point. The transition between these descriptions looks nothing like anything your intuition can visualize. The solidity of the world is not what it seems either. We never truly touch anything. What we feel as contact is the repulsion between quantum fields. The exclusion principle prevents electrons from occupying the same state, and thanks to that invisible rule, chemistry, molecules, and stable matter exist. Without that strange restriction, everything would collapse into the lowest energy state. There would be no structure, no life. Inside the nucleus, there are no solid blocks either. Protons and neutrons are made of quarks held together by field interactions. Most of their mass does not come from tiny internal pieces, but from confined energy. At the deepest level, what we call matter is energy organized into stable patterns. There is no ultimate tiny bead at the end of the chain. There are quantum fields spread throughout space. Even the vacuum is far from empty. It is a dynamic stage where quantum fluctuations constantly appear and disappear. The atom is mostly space, but that space is full of structural activity. Microscopic reality is not a scene of solid objects floating in nothing. It is a network of interacting fields. And when you go even deeper, you discover that everything is described by abstract mathematical structures. The wave function is not a physical wave in three-dimensional space. It is an entity in a broader mathematical space. What exists at the fundamental level are not tangible things, but relationships, symmetries, and equations. Physics does not give you a picture, it gives you a set of complex numbers that predict with extreme precision what you will observe. The conclusion is unsettling. The universe is not built from material bricks, but from information and probabilities. The solid matter you experience is an emergent result of quantum rules that resemble nothing in everyday life. Classical intuition fails. What remains is a world where reality at its deepest level is more abstract than tangible. Inside an atom, there are no tiny spheres spinning in emptiness. There are fields, superpositions, and mathematics that, when organized, produce the appearance of a firm and stable world. And that gap between appearance and foundation is what makes looking inside an atom one of the most intellectually disturbing experiences that exists. The more you try to imagine it, the more you realize the difficulty isn't in the calculations, but in your own mind. Our brains evolved to survive in a macroscopic world: stones, trees, distances, moderate speeds. They were never designed to understand a domain where properties don't exist until measured, where an object can be in multiple states at once, and where location stops being a fundamental idea. That's why when you try to draw what happens inside an atom, you inevitably create misleading metaphors. You draw clouds, orbits, trajectories, tiny spheres. But at the deepest level, there is nothing to draw. There is no visual equivalent. What exists is a mathematical description telling you the probabilities of different outcomes if you interact with the system. This leads to a disturbing consequence. The reality you experience daily is not the ultimate foundation of existence. It is an emergent layer, a simplified translation of far more complex quantum processes. The table is solid because countless quantum interactions act together coherently. The everyday world is stable because microscopic strangeness averages out when combined in vast numbers. Yet that strangeness never disappears. It remains the foundation of everything. Every atom in your body, every molecule of air, every particle of light entering your eyes obeys rules that completely contradict common sense. And still, those rules produce an extraordinarily ordered, predictable, and coherent universe at large scales. It also means that observation is not a secondary detail in nature. Measurement is not merely recording what was already there. It is a physical process that becomes part of the system's dynamics. When you interact with the world, you are not a completely external spectator. You are part of the chain of events that determines the outcome you experience. This does not mean reality depends on the human mind, but rather that physical properties are defined through interactions. There is no completely isolated state independent of relationships. Modern physics suggests that what is fundamental is not isolated objects, but connections, correlations, and structures emerging from them. Perhaps most unsettling of all is that at the deepest level, everything can be described as information, not information in the everyday sense of written data, but physical information encoded in quantum states. Matter, energy, particles, and fields can all be understood as different ways of organizing information according to extremely precise mathematical laws. Thus, the universe resembles less a machine made of solid parts and more a dynamic network of constantly changing patterns. There is no final brick of reality. There are ever deeper levels of mathematical structure giving rise to what we perceive as the material world, and that changes the perspective entirely. If the foundation of reality is not something tangible but something abstract, then what we call the real is largely an emergent interpretation of invisible processes. We live within a layer of stability built upon foundations that, at their core, are profoundly strange. Looking inside, an atom doesn't just reveal how matter works. It reveals something far more unsettling. Human intuition is not a reliable guide for understanding nature at its deepest level. Fundamental reality is not meant to be imagined, it is meant to be described with mathematics. And perhaps that is the most disturbing lesson of all. What holds the universe together are not things you can touch or see, but invisible, probabilistic, abstract structures that, when combined, create the extraordinarily convincing illusion of a solid, continuous, and familiar world. If you made it to the end, comment, "I made it," and I'll reply to you personally. And if this resonated with you, subscribe to be part of the journey and leave a like if you enjoyed it.